So once more, let's talk again about derivatives, and these are derivatives that you must know. So let's start off with the power rule, and the power rule says that the derivative of ax to the n, where a and n are constants, is just an times x to the n minus 1. So all you're doing is you're multiplying by the power that you had, and then decreasing that power by 1. So here's some practice problems. So what is the derivative of x squared? Or you know what, actually, I'd like you guys to pause the video and try all of these three before I give you the answers, and then hit play once you got them. So let's go to the first one. The derivative of x squared. Well, the power n is 2. Well, that's just simply 1. So the derivative of that is 2 times 1, x to the n minus 1, 2 minus 1, that would give us 1. So simply 2x. 2x to the first, but 2x would do. So 1 over x. What is the derivative of 1 over x with respect to x? So this is one of the ones where it might make it easier if you rewrite it. 1 over x is equal to x to the negative 1. And now we can use the power rule. So simply multiply by the power, so we have a negative 1 outside, and we have x, and then we subtract 1 from the power, and it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, the power, we keep on subtracting, so negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. And, you know, it might look nicer if you write it as negative 1 over x squared. So that's the derivative of 1 over x. And here's one last one where we have an a out front. In this case, a is equal to 3. So to do this, we multiply the power times a. So 3 times 9, that gives us 27 times x. And the power is going to be 9 minus 1, which is 8. So that's the power rule. Shouldn't be too hard to get. You guys are going to be using this a lot throughout the whole year, so you guys really want to be comfortable with this. This is a really important way to take derivatives. So let's go on to more derivatives you must know. Okay? These are definitely ones you want to memorize. You really don't want to be thinking too much about these, or else you're going to run out of time during a test. So the derivative of sine of x is cosine of x. And once again, if you guys want to pause the video and do as many as you can, and then I'll go over the answers. So that's cosine of x. So what's the derivative of cosine x? The derivative of cosine x is negative sine x. So what's the derivative of negative sine x? Well, that's negative cosine x. And the derivative of negative cosine x brings us back to sine x. And it's just a neat little loop. So it goes from here and then loops back around. So the derivative of e to the x, this is definitely the easiest derivative. It's just e to the x. Doesn't matter. Derivative of log of x, also an important one. Definitely want to memorize it. 1 over x. And lastly, the derivative of a to the x. And this one personally took me the longest to memorize, is you keep the a to the x, and then you multiply that by the natural log of a. So once again, a is a constant, so let's say this was 2 to the x. The derivative of 2 to the x would be 2 to the x times log of 2. So let's go ahead and use those to figure out what the derivative of this function is, and also what the second derivative is. Second derivative is the derivative of the first derivative. So let's go ahead and do that. And when taking the derivative of this function, we can pretty much take the derivative of each piece. So let's go ahead and do that. The derivative of 6x squared, well, we can use the power rule for that one. So derivative of 6x squared, the power is 2, multiply 2 by the constant, so we get a 12x. And 2 minus 1, that gives us a power of 1, so I'm just going to leave it as 12x. So negative 3 to the x, And the derivative of a to the x is a to the x log of a. So a in this case is 3, so we have a 3 to the x times the log of 3. The derivative of sine x is cosine. Nothing happens to that 2. That 2 just keeps chilling out front. And not lastly, we have 2 more terms. Derivative of negative 6 ln x. So once again, the 6 is just, hanging out. And the natural log of x, the derivative of that is 1 over x. And lastly, the derivative of 9 to the x, that's just like 3 to the x, just with 9. So the derivative of a to the x, remember, is a to the x log of a in this case. So that's a pretty, that's a derivative right there. And that's a pretty long function. We were able to take a derivative. So now let's go ahead and take the second derivative. So once again, we just have a bunch of terms and we're going to take the derivative of each term individually. So the derivative of 12x, well, that's the power rule. The power is 1, so we multiply 1 by 12 and subtract 1 from the power. So we're left with a power of 0. So 12 times x to the 0 is just 12. So now let's look at this next term. So we have a negative 3 to the x times log of 3. So, this might look tricky, but it really isn't. Because think about it, log of 3, that's just a constant. And constant we can put out front. So we can take out that log of 3 and multiply it by the derivative of negative 3 to the x. And, we already did that. The derivative of negative 3 to the x is negative 3 to the x log of 3. And from there, we still need to multiply by that log 3. And what we get is negative 3 to the x log of 3 squared. So that's that term. Let's look at the next term, 2 cosine x. Well, that shouldn't be too hard. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. So we have a negative 2 sine x. Remember, nothing happens to that 2. And what's the derivative of negative 6 over x? Well, negative 6 over x is equal to negative 6 times x to the negative first. And from there, we can just use the power rule. So the derivative of negative 6x to the negative first with respect to x is equal to, well, multiply by the power, so that gives us the positive 6x. And then subtract 1 from the power gives us a negative 2. So we're left with 6 over x squared. And it turned from negative to positive. Now notice that. That's what's going to happen a lot of times when you have 1 over x. It'll turn from negative to positive or positive to negative. So we have that positive 6 over x squared. And then plus, well, we have the 9x ln 9, and that's similar to the 3x ln 3. And remember, we just kind of ignored the ln 9. We put it out front. We took the derivative of 9 to the x, and then we multiplied the log 9. So we should get, again, 9 to the x log of 9 squared. Because we're pretty much just getting another log of 9 when taking this derivative. And so look at that. Just by knowing all these derivatives that we've memorized and knowing the power rule, we were able to take this pretty long function and take the derivative, and then we could even take the second derivative. And, from here, taking the third derivative shouldn't even be that hard, since, it's all the same format. So once again, make sure you memorize all of these and the power rule. So I'm going to leave you guys with this out here, and that's it.